right?
And we're live. It is the end of April, 30th. The 30th tomorrow will be the beginning of a new month. And I'm here with myself, Brian, and Viv. And we will be working on, we'll be discussing various aspects of the Codealia IDE. So, yes, after Thomas's demonstration, I've got a much better idea of how I should structure the IDE. Yep. So the main idea is we want to maintain this sort of full page layout for the students so that they have, this entire thing will be the entire page is solely focused on the workshop. There, the Codealia branding is very limited. There's only a small footer here mentioning the where it belongs to. So cool. So the idea is students have the entire page, devoted to the workshop. So we don't want our IDE to be very intrusive to that. So my first iteration was a standard geeky, setup where you have an IDE, and then the browser interprets it interactively and spits out some HTML on one side. Yeah, so this is it. So this is very, too programmers-ish, not very friendly to new users. It's the editor is, taking too much space. It's, maybe too much attention is focused on here. So what we want to do is have, my idea of it right now is to have maybe a small button affixed on this page that you can click and it brings up the IDE, and you can hide it so that you can go back to the page you want to look at. So when you bring up the editor, you can edit some HTML, and that bit of HTML is perhaps sandboxed a small section of the entire page HTML, like here. So this is, for example, I think for this lesson, Thomas wants to, play around with the settings tag. So settings tag is over here. Maybe all I want to do is sandbox the editor to only edit this small chunk of HTML. So I think that's entirely possible. So, well, where I'm trying to get at is there's a small button maybe in the corner of the screen. You click it, brings up an editor. That editor will point to HTML in a small section of the page, and that can be edited and saved, and that will update the page. What do you think?
Yeah, that sounds great. Is your
Good.
idea to have? Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. Yep.
So is your idea to have a couple of those on the page? So maybe one will be at the top, one will be in the middle, one will be at the bottom, something like that? Or are you just going to have one IDE, one button for just
We'll have
one
one
section
button.
of a
We'll have
page?
one button, but that will bring up the IDE, and maybe it can have multiple tabs, and
Oh,
that can
okay,
switch between
got it, got it.
sections. But that's more
Sections
advanced.
on
We'll
that
stick
page.
to
Okay,
one section, yeah.
okay,
So
got it.
I'm gonna write a little design document here, what I want the IDE to look like. Um, Now, how do I begin this? Yeah, this is just a high-level overview of what we want. So I'll try and make it quick.
Can you just
Um,
give me the link to the IDE where you actually have that file saved so I can go, or maybe I can pull it down from your branch of GitHub, so just so I can look at the
it's on develop right
CSS.
now.
I mean, it's on your develop, but it's on your develop branch,
No, it's
right?
on the actual
Oh,
develop.
oh, oh, okay, alrighty. It's already
Yeah.
been integrated. I'm sorry. Got it.
Yep. It's already been integrated. So we want, okay, what are we looking for? Requirements. Let's bring this up. Okay, it should not obstruct our page. Right, it should not obstruct the page. So it must be able to hide the IDE. Simple. That's one of the requirements. Should not obstruct the page. Right. Right. Okay. Changes should be sandboxed to certain sections of the page HTML. This is for simplicity mostly. Right. So yeah, with this change, we will limit the. We will maintain, a very, interactive and interesting web page, while we only expose them to a small dynamic portion, so that limits the complexity of what we expose them to. So we don't expose them to the entire page, we only expose them to a small chunk of it.
That makes sense.
Right.
I
What
can't
else?
find your IDE on the develop branch. I don't see a link to it. Is there a link to it, or how do I find it?
It should be on the static pages code playground. That's the raw HTML.
Static pages.
Static pages. There's a code playground. Yeah, so that's it. So it's using Angular to build up the IDE at the moment, but I think a lot of this is going to change. So I'm pretty much going to rewrite it from scratch again.
Are you going to rewrite it using Angular?
Yeah,
hopefully?
I'll still use Angular,
Okay.
but I won't be keeping this HTML any longer.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, so it should be sandboxed, right? It should. So, well, there will be a design question whether or not we want this to be interactive. Interactive is cool, but maybe it distracts them from the actual editing. Well, it all depends on how we bring it up. Okay, I'll just keep delay that decision to later. So we want a little button. Okay. Well, let me start writing up. No. Okay. So there is a small button affixed to the page to bring up the IDE. Right.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yep, go ahead.
Could you put the link to the IDE in either in Skype or in this group chat? Because the static pages, there's no link to the static pages from the main. I'm on the Codealia developer.
Yeah, there is no. You need to append code playground to it. I intentionally hid it.
Okay, yeah, I realize, but I'm just looking at your code underscore playground. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I got a link to it on develop, so you can see it on develop.
Okay, that'll help. Oh, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead. Sorry to disturb with this.
So that's all right. There's a small button affixed, so there will be multiple editors. um, bound to different sections of the code. Okay. So another idea is, well, you'll see later how the library works, but I want to bind multiple editors to different sections, so each of them works independently of the other. So say, for example, we want to bind one editor up here to edit these settings and the Jumbotron and, headers and whatnot. Maybe we could have another editor bound here, which we can perhaps switch to with tabs or something. But yeah, all these are much later. So that's the basic idea. I think we'll need to go through this in a proper meeting. But I don't have a lot of time, so I just threw out all the ideas I had immediately. I'll revisit this later. Let's. What do you think? Do you have any questions so
No, I don't
far?
have any questions. My process now is to go and pull down the develop branch and look at the code for the IDE section.
Well,
And
I
is it
can actually
under?
walk you. I can
Okay.
walk you through the code.
Okay, that'd be
There's
great.
no reason for you to, um, look at it alone. I need to bring somebody up to scratch anyway, so it's good for me to guide you. Okay, cool. So let's begin. So I'm gonna open up the actual. So this is. Can you see my screen clearly?
Yes, I can. Absolutely, I can see it.
Okay, cool. So this is the HTML for the editor. So right now, how it works is, okay, so this is the whole editor thing. Everything is contained inside a single div. This is a top level div, and that holds both the left and right hand side of this editor, right?
Yeah, I got
So,
it.
yep, you can see there are a couple of Angular attributes here. Anything that starts with ng is specific to Angular. So I'm
Okay.
defining an Angular application, and then that's bound to a certain Angular controller. And this is a initialization function. That means when this
Got it.
view is rendered,
Mm-hmm.
this function is called, which is taken from the controller, I believe. This one. Okay. This thing, ignore it for now. This is really nothing, not important. I was really playing with the code and getting used to Angular, so don't worry about that. Okay. This is also not important. Let's ignore that. Okay, the most important thing is here, editor. So I have this div with an ID editor, and this corresponds to the left panel of this editor.
Okay.
So this contains pretty much the ACE editor. The ACE editor does the syntax highlighting and does all the intelligent stuff that you expect from a normal code editor, right?
Okay.
So I can add P and it correctly highlights things. It even has interesting error messages, unexpected end of file, and a tag name. So all these things come free with ACE. So yeah, cool. So let me bring up now the JavaScript. Okay.
What are should I just want to know what the names of the files are. So I'm just looking at the bottom. One is
Mhm.
playground.html.erb and the other one is IDE.js.
Yep. So,
Mm,
is there a
Maybe
playground? No, there's just an IDE.js right now.
right. Okay.
So everything is just under IDE.js.
Okay, great. I just want to know where
Yeah,
the files are. Okay.
cool. So yeah. So this is the entire thing. don't worry about what's in the top right now. This I'll come to later. That's in too much technical depth. But okay, we'll begin. So this is how you define a new Angular application. So you go angular.module and give it a name. This is your application name. And then these are a couple of dependencies. We'll get to this later. But the main idea is you need to name your application here. Can you see
Got
it?
it. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Angular.module. And then these, this is just a couple of configurations for the application. So I configure it. So this is using, I set up a path. Like this is kind of like having a controller and a route inside the page.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see here, code playground. It's appended with this hash. So hash is is the beginning of like in-page links, and everything after here is a specific route just for this Angular application.
And
So
you'll
it
be able to
works.
iterate through it. So you can do a lesson 2, 3. It'll basically be the same route, just with a different ID ending, 1 or 2 or 3.
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
So I can do this. It does like no visible change at the moment, but it changes the number here. But again, yeah, this is really just for
like a
my
single
own
page application.
benefit. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, it is a single page application.
Right.
Angular. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean the
So
framework,
yeah.
like the framework for one. Okay.
Yeah. So that's the idea. So I've defined this like route, this in-page routing to work that way, to have lessons, and lesson ID appended to it. Yeah. So that was the basic idea for this part. I think for the first iteration, we probably don't need this. We can hide this little functionality and just maintain one sandboxed editor, and just we'll add things on top of that. So yeah, another one is, okay, this is the more important one. So I initialize the controller. So I need to go call my Angular module, which is that, this little app, and I call .controller, and then I give the controller name. So this controller name is important because it's referred back here in the Angular controller attribute. Can you see that?
Yes, I got it.
Cool. Yeah. And then again, this is a little bit more complicated, the reason why I'm doing this, but yeah. So, well, ignore all this here right now. Let's focus on this. This is a callback function that is called once the controller is, every time the controller is called. When it's called is a little complicated. I myself have not figured out exactly when it's called all the time, but it's called multiple times. For example, when the route changes, the in-page route changes. Okay, so what it does is it binds a couple of attributes to the root scope. The root scope is a special scope. Do you know what scopes are?
No, I don't. No, I don't.
Okay. How do I explain it? It's like, but do you know what scopes are in general in programming, at least?
No, I don't. No, I don't.
Okay, that's all right. It's like an area. No, it's like a space where variables are defined. So, for example, if I look up here, line 12, I'm defining a variable called app, right? And this app is in the global scope. That means
Correct. It
this
is.
app is accessible from anywhere. I mean,
Oh, you mean that
everywhere.
scope? What,
Yeah.
that is the difference between a global and a local variable. Whether it's
Mhm.
if it's global, okay, I
Yeah.
call that the difference between global and local variables. But that's
Yeah.
called something that's in scope or out of scope.
Yeah.
Okay,
So app is in the global scope,
correct.
right?
Yeah,
So
it is.
yeah, that's the
It's
idea.
available
It's
to
kind of like
everything.
yeah,
Yeah,
available to everything. Then you also have
yeah,
the local scope.
yeah. Okay.
So these scopes are kind of like that. So they have little um, little areas of little like places where you can define variables. So the
Mm-hmm.
root scope is the top level scope of the entire
Mm-hmm.
Angular application.
Okay.
All the variables should is accessible. It's kind of like a global scope for the application only.
Mm-hmm.
If you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I do.
The scope here, this scope alone is specific to the controller. So
Mm-hmm.
everything defined in this scope is just for this one controller, the lessons
Okay.
controller.
Okay.
Yeah. Route params is just like, in Rails, you have params
Okay.
that it acts the same. So I've defined a couple of variables in root scope. Mm, uh, yeah. Okay, this is not important right now. The more important thing is this init function, which I have bound to the controller scope. So if you remember, I showed you this init function here. So this belongs to the controller,
Can I
and
see
I've
that in the
defined it
function again?
here.
On the left, is it on the left-hand side? Oh, up there.
Yes,
Okay,
on the
got it.
right hand side.
Got it. Okay.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm defining it. I'm attaching it to um, the controller scope. Okay, so ignore that whatever that line I just deleted. It's complicated why I did that, but
Okay.
it is functionally equivalent to having this. Okay, so inside this init function, I do the most important thing, which is initializing the entire application. So the most important thing is here. I'm saving to the controller scope a preview variable and an editor variable. Oops. So I have a preview and an editor, right?
Mm-hmm.
The preview is where I put the raw HTML here.
Mm-hmm.
So this preview is
The
this
left
thing
left
on
frame.
the right. Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The preview is the right
This
and the left is the editor.
yeah, this is the editor and this is the preview. The one in red is the preview.
Preview. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Got
Yeah.
it.
Um yeah. So okay. So that when I initialize it, I create these variables and attach it to the controller. And then I do a couple of settings here. So this, when I create the editor, you can see I'm calling Ace. Ace is the library that we're using to create the text editor. So it does a lot of things built in, like syntax highlighting, um, adding line numbers, and
So
also
basically,
has
ACE is a JavaScript library that you have included in the
mhm,
files, in the CSS, the assets, right? I mean, yeah,
yeah,
the CSS assets. I mean,
JavaScripts.
JavaScript folder assets.
Hmm.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, yeah. So this is so the syntax to create a new editor is to call ace.edit and pass in the ID of a div or whatever that we want to act as the editor. In this case, this is the div that I'm talking about. So I've assigned that div an ID editor called ace.edit on it, and that creates a new instance of an editor which I save to the controller scope under the variable name editor. Are you following so far?
I am following so far. My question is that editor, is that both for the left and the right-hand side? Because I
No.
thought it was higher up. I remember how you said at the very beginning you have that first div? But you
Mm-hmm.
need that ACE editor for both the left-hand and the right-hand side. You need it
No.
both for the preview and the editor, correct?
Nope. I only
No.
need it for the editor because
Mm-hmm.
that ACE only adds the functionality of syntax highlighting, adding line numbers, and things like that. For here, the
Mm-hmm.
preview of the
Mm-hmm.
HTML, I don't need any of that. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
using the browser's ability to render pure HTML. There's
Okay,
no need
got it. Got it.
editor.
So,
Yeah.
okay, so it goes and interprets it. Okay, got it.
Yep.
Alrighty.
Yeah. So this one is just I'm aliasing scope.editor because that's a bit hard to write a lot because I'm using it a lot down here.
Okay.
So I'm just calling it editor here, just a shorter name. And
Okay.
these are all ACE
Right.
editor specific functions. So I can there it is. Uh, yeah, I can. So there's documentation here about how ACE works. I think it's also built using a single page app. I'll paste it here. I'll
Okay.
paste the link in the chat.
Okay.
You can see it. There's a little small guide. It's
Cool.
not a
Thank you.
very, thorough. I mean, it's not very thorough document, thoroughly documented.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed it's not, it doesn't give a lot of go into a lot of detail about certain functions. Some parts are also still undocumented, so that's unfortunate. But yeah, it's what we have to work with. This is one of the best uh, out there for doing this kind of work, so we can't complain. Right.
Okay.
Okay. But so these are just a couple of settings that I've set the editor to do.
Okay.
So one is, well, they just by the method name, it's pretty obvious what it does. The first one sets the theme. So this is the color scheme. I set it to a certain color scheme called Ace Theme Chrome. I think I have a link. I've written down a link somewhere that points to various, somewhere where you can experiment with Ace Editor color schemes. Because I think, as far as I can tell at least, there is no way to, not built into the library, any way to customize, roll out your own custom theme. We could hack into it, but that's for a much later story.
Got it.
Yeah. Font size, that's pretty obvious what it does. Mode, so this editor, get session set mode, will set ACE to, set the mode of the syntax highlighting mode for ACE. So you can see here, I'm setting it to HTML. So it's using ACE, telling ACE that this editor should be acting like an editor for HTML. So that's why you can recognize tags like H1 tags and P tags and color them accordingly.
Okay.
Yep. What else? Yes, set highlight active line false. Oh yeah, that's in some editors when you click on a certain line, it will highlight the entire row. Right? It's just a editor option. Show print margin, again, that's all editor options. This one's a slightly more complicated one. I'm adding a custom command, which at the moment is redundant because I'm doing them interactively. But what this does is I'm creating a new command called preview, and I'm binding a certain key combination to trigger this this command. So in this case, it was Shift Enter. So do you remember before where my first version of the IDE was you had to do, I think I still have it on, it's still on production. Oh, not website 1. Right. The previous version where I had to hold shift and then press enter to run the IDE. This is how I did it. So I created a new command, create the bind a certain key combination for triggering the command, and then I also bound the callback to receive that, to execute when the command is called. Right?
Okay.
Okay,
All
I'll
right.
get to this line later, but what you can see here is execute is calling the controller scope dot generate preview, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is another function which I've defined up here. So this is what is interactively rendering the content of the editor, right?
Okay.
So whenever I type, where is it? Okay, as I type here, you can see that the preview is updating, right?
Yeah, I do.
So this is being done by this function here. So what it does is I look for the preview object, which is this div that I mentioned here. No. Oh yeah, yes. This is this div here.
Mm-hmm. And then it goes and it
And
renders that HTML into that div.
yep. So everything after that is really finding the right place to put the editor's content. So this editor.getValue is the contents
Mm-hmm.
of the
It's yeah, of the editor and putting it
yep,
into the HTML, into the
yep,
the
that's
body
right.
of the preview in HTML format.
Yes, that's right.
Funky. Okay. Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
cool. So that's called every time I press shift and enter. But right now it's being rendered interactively so that I'm
Yeah.
not
How'd you
pressing
do
shift
that?
and enter. Yeah.
How'd you do that?
So that is done down here. There's a special event I bound to on the editor called onChange. So that means every time I change something on the editor, this
Mm-hmm.
function is called. And this function, all I do is um, pass that call on to scope.generate preview with the right parameters. This is important because I'm expecting an editor object here. So down here, I need to pass in editor manually. Because if you just pass in the function here, like I did in line 60, it will call it with a different argument. Here it's set as E. That is, I think, like an event object, but that's not the editor. So in order to pass in the correct object, I needed to call scope.generatePreview and manually pass in the editor object.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, the main idea is this event, the change event, is triggered every time something happens to the editor.
The generate dot
And
get session. The generate dot get session. What can
oh,
you? What's going on
the
there?
get session is a specific syntax. So
Okay.
that's how you access part of it. Yeah, there's a funky diagram here, but how ACE is structured. No.
So at the
Yeah,
very
down
bottom, it's saying to get the most recent session and preview that. It's overriding the get session is overriding the generate preview. Did I get that right? You see what I'm saying? The code at the very bottom,
no.
get session, Is no?
No, the get session is one way to right. So the editor is a reference to like a very top level overview of how the top level of how the editor is functioning. So you have this funky diagram on ACE, at least how everything's structured. So this editor up here, this here, has all the configurations and settings of, the entire editor and everything. And it's consisted of different smaller parts underneath it. One of them is the session, which its job is to do everything related to manipulating the text. Yeah. So it, it pretty much does everything. Most of what the editor is doing.
It stores the state related to a document.
Yep. It keeps track of this, selection, cursor, position, all that. So this is the interactive part of the editor. The other part is the rendering part, which we
I got it.
It has a different purpose. So if
I got it.
For example, here I want to register to a change event. Are you familiar with JavaScript event handling? Through jQuery and things.
Yeah.
So I want to register a change event on this part of the editor, the session part. So I need to first get the session and then register this listener on that session, because that session object, that session part of the editor is the one triggering the event. And then I pass in a callback function. You familiar with that? Callback functions?
Yeah, that it's supposed to bring back information.
Sort of. No, not quite. This function is triggered every time this event is triggered. So whenever the session encounters an onChange event, it will loop through all the callbacks and call them with the event data, pretty much. So every time something happens, like onChange, so just about anything changes in the session, like you enter a new
letter or something.
Something like that.
Okay.
It will call this function, and this function is what updates the preview contents. So that is how I'm doing it interactively.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's a rundown of what it's doing right now. I think, right. So I've gone up to this far. I know how I can replicate that. Now, the main thing we have to do is, well, we might end up rewriting most of the application anyway, is to make it work like this. So we want to have the IDE still working, but all the changes should be sandboxed to a certain section of the page, and we should be able to hide the IDE, so it's not like here where it's stuck to the left corner. We want to be able to maximize and minimize that at will. So, but do you get the idea of what I'm trying to do?
Yeah. I'm just cool. I'm just wondering. No. I'm thinking of how to minimize it, make it visible and invisible, and the size and the button to click. I'm just thinking of all the pieces to it.
Yeah.
Okay. Alrighty. So I have to. Yeah. I'm in a room, so I have to let another person use the room. So
okay.
So
that's all right.
Is that alrighty? I'm going to go and look at the code next, but what do you want me to do next after this? since I have to move myself.
Okay. Well,
I can certainly, I will certainly be able to listen.
familiar.
I just won't be able to talk.
Okay. Well, familiarize.
Myself with
I
Angular.
think, yeah, with Angular. That's
Okay.
the main thing. Just go
Okay.
through a couple of tutorials.
Okay. Okay.
Let me know if you have problems.
Hmm.
Yeah. For now, I don't. Since we have the client meeting in 2 days, and
Yeah.
I really don't think I have enough time.
Right. But you'll be able to show
Yeah.
them this is the first iteration.
Yeah. Okay. I can
Okay.
show them this as a first iteration. That's no
Okay.
problem.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, to get it integrated with Thomas's
It's going to take a little
workshop
longer.
will take a
Yeah.
little longer. Yeah.
Alrighty.
But it's not impossible.
Okay.
Okay. Another thing I want you
Yeah.
to look at, in fact,
Yes.
is uh, there is this gem called Angular JS Rails.
Okay.
Mm, oh, well, this one looks a bit small. 68 commits. Okay. Well, I want you to do some research into gems that integrate Angular with Rails, because I want to see if there's anything that handles things very neatly. Because um, I I was working on another project. I mean, I just started another project on my own personal project that was using a gem called Ember Rails, which actually does something very nice. So it generates inside the app assets JavaScript, it generates a lot of this. It pretty much generates like an Ember application inside the app assets JavaScript folder, and it manages all that just like Rails manages its entire structure. So you even have a template for views. I mean, you even have folder for views and templates. So if you look at templates, we have a special file name. It's, like Rails has ERB. In Ember, you have something called handlebars. And this is like a snippet of the handlebar markup. Um, I know that in Angular, you can use sort of do pretty much the same thing. So I was wondering if there is a gem that manages all this uh, manages things in a very neat way, just like Rails manages its entire application. So if you could do a bit of research on that, that would be great, because I don't have the time to do that right now. If you can't speak, just type something in the chat box just to let me know that you're still
Oh yeah. Okay.
listening.
I stepped outside, and I still have yeah. So I can, yeah, absolutely. So
Hmm.
I got it. Angular Rails
Yeah.
that will handle that will abstract out some of the complexity.
Yes, and well, I think the most important thing is I wanted to be able to manage this, like there. Once the Angular application gets a little large, you will get. Well, let me show you. Mm, Well, maybe. Well, maybe that's. Well, okay. I'll just show you the problem that I had with Ember last time. When I'm trying to like hard code the views.
Okay.
So this is an Ember, like this is the entire HTML for an Ember application.
Okay.
So in Ember, you define these things called little handlebar snippets,
Mm-hmm.
and these will contain like something like partials,
Yeah,
in
yeah. From
Rails.
when I used Ember, I used a
Yep.
little bit of handlebars. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. And the problem with this is what I had to do was in just this one file, I had to put a lot of little partials, which
Uh-huh.
was very unwieldy. and
Mm-hmm.
this was just a small application. If it grew up, I didn't have any way to handle that.
Yeah, it couldn't
So
scale.
yeah, I couldn't scale. So my application, when I tried out this Ember Rails gem,
Hmm.
it actually dealt with everything in a very neat way.
That's the
So it
experiments, right?
created a no, the experiments was that experiments was my first Ember application.
What was the
The
name of
second
the
one
gem you
is
used? What was the
Ember
name of the Ember
Rails.
gem? Oh, it was called Ember Rails?
Yeah, it was called
Okay.
Ember Rails. Ember
Okay.
dash Rails. It's here.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So it handles all this, all the handlebar templates
Uh-huh.
in
Okay.
a very neat way. In a just like Rails handles its own view, like the views. This gem creates all the directories and manages all the compiling of all this view templates into a single application.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So I really like that, and I'm to be honest, maybe this is overkill for Angular. Angular is more not as heavyweight as Ember.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe as we go through this, we might find we don't need that level of control. I mean, that level of sophistication.
But you want to have something
But
as a backup just in case.
yeah,
Okay.
and yeah, just look out there if there's anything. If there's nothing like that, like nothing about Angular Rails, I'll just look up how people hook Angular together with Rails in general. If
Got
you
it.
find that they don't need to use any gem, maybe we don't need that sort of functionality at all.
Okay.
It really is s- that simple that you don't need a hierarchy of views.
I find
And
that a little
this,
hard to believe considering what you're doing.
yeah,
Considering
um,
they're building out an IDE, I think you're going to need something to manage the
yeah,
complexity, especially if you're talking about different sections of an HTML page.
yeah,
Once they start,
exactly.
once you want to put in, because that IDE is supposed to handle HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I
Hmm.
think it'll need to be a little, it'll have to be pretty hefty.
Yeah, true, true. Yeah, but don't stress yourself if you can't find anything. There is a way around it. We can use Rails to do the templating and just
Hmm.
have Rails do the dynamically generate the Angular components. It'll be
Okay.
a bit hacky, but
Hmm.
that will also work. So
Okay.
it's not like we have no option.
Okay. Is there
Yeah, but
anything
I'm
else?
just wondering if there is, and already a gem setup. Well, other than that, nothing. I'll try and, when I have more time, I'll bring you up to speed with most of what I've done. Mm,
I can
yeah,
look at your code. Once I download it from Develop, I can look
yep,
at your code, right?
yep. But it will be a bit more complex because I didn't write it for anyone else but myself. So
Okay.
there will be a couple of strange things I'm doing which don't seem immediately obvious. But yeah, if you have any questions, make a note of them, and I'll try and speak with you Friday, possibly. Not sure about tomorrow. Tomorrow I might not have time in the
No,
evening.
Friday will be good. That'll give me a little time
Yeah.
because I'm trying to
Okay.
finish up some stuff. So Friday will be great. I'll just, I'll check in. Are you using Slack?
Cool.
Will you put
No, not yet.
messages
I
on
haven't
Slack?
set. I haven't set Slack up.
Okay, alrighty.
Yeah.
It's it's
Does it
it's
take
pretty
long to
nice.
set?
Huh?
Does it take long to set it up?
No, I
No.
just you just click on the invitation and it sets you up, and you get all the messages. So I'm
Oh,
reading
okay.
all the Skype messages now on Slack. And it's just,
Okay.
it's just if you just quickly want only the group stuff, you just go to
Uh-huh.
Slack. It's quick. I'm just using Skype for like if I'm doing an HOA, I want to like take a look at what other people are doing. But otherwise, it's pretty quick through Slack. I mean, it's
Okay.
on thing is
Cool.
just it's another communications channel. It just seems pretty simple and quick.
Right. All right. Let me see if I can. Okay. Username. Cool. Slack. Slack brings.
Okay.
Cool.
And in terms of the models, what should I look at in the models? I have the two files, the HTML view file and the IDE, the .js. In terms of the models, what are the models that you use, just so I can go and take a look at what it looks
There
like?
is no models at the moment.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So this is all hard coded. The behavior is entirely hard coded. There's no models.
Okay.
Oh yes. Yeah, we'll speak about the persistent model thing later, I think,
Okay.
tonight.
Let
Yeah,
me let
it's
me
getting.
let me first let me bone up on Angular. Let me at least read about it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Don't worry. Yeah, I think I just had that idea, and I think after I discuss with Pete maybe,
Hmm.
and a couple of other people see what their vision of the the workshops are,
Okay.
then I'll have a better idea of what I need to put in
The model.
the models. Yes.
Okay. Cool. Neat.
Cool.
And okay. Alrighty. This is nothing. I was just thinking what David and
Mhm.
it looked like David and Pete were working on something that has a CSS portion, kind of like a hefty CSS portion. You know
Oh
what I
yeah.
mean? For the
Yep.
workshop. It looked like
Hmm.
so I'm not sure what it looks like either. So I'll keep an eye out for that.
Yep. And
Okay.
update me on that because I haven't seen the CSS at all.
Okay. Okay. We'll
Yeah.
do. I'll try to keep my eye out
Cool.
and at least stop in on that if I can. Okay.
Awesome.
Thank
Cool.
you.
All right. Yeah. It's a good pairing. We'll try and meet up maybe on Friday again
Sure.
to
Sounds
continue
good.
work on this. Cool.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Cool.
Bye.
Bye.